Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the end of our weekly id Invaded discussion videos. We're here to talk all about the finale, File 13, Channeled Part 2, and in case you were worried and maybe confused about what happened in this week's episode, don't you worry my friends, because I am probably just as confused as you are. Hey, don't get me wrong, what I saw was awesome, but I am admittedly kind of confused. But hey, I'm not exactly a great detective, now am I? But before we get into talking about the finale, I do, as always, have to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At Wizardo320, at Infamous519, at CatPassness, at Bubbalubber, at Honda Gilbert, at Deep Not That Deep, at Karen Majit, at D Cherry Wolf, and at Yin Yang Reader. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, everybody, and thanks to all of you for supporting these id Invaded videos. It has been an absolute blast. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and talk about the final episode. I am only a little bit sad. All right then. So this week we have a sort of battle to save Kura on two fronts. You have the battle to stop John Walker, and you have the battle to stop Kiki Asakai. One of these is significantly more dope than the other, and the other is significantly sadder than the other. Let's go ahead and start with the John Walker stuff, since I'm sure that's what everybody is probably most curious about. I did admittedly have to watch the explanation of what happened a second time around, but that's kind of what I have to do sometimes for id Invaded. Usually for most shows I could just watch it in one pass and kind of get a general idea of what happened so that I can talk about it for these videos. Here, I did have to watch the explanation of what in the hell happened, and I'm still not totally clear. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I ain't exactly a brilliant detective, but I'm gonna try my best. So when we open the episode, the action scene is like, and I mean like, when I say the action scene, I mean like we open with the straight up action scene. Like there's very little banter to start. Like we just jump right in and you see people like inside the different idwells just losing their minds, and then Sakaido drops down and just delivers a Falcon punch right to John Walker's dome, but he misses and gets a stomach full of cane for his troubles. And this scene takes place in what is this an Ava reference? It feels like an Ava reference. I could be completely bonkers in that, but it really felt like it. Like the red water, the blue sky with the stars in it, the weird giant head of the baby, the just general bizarre ass setting. Like I was just like, this feels like the end of Evangelion. Am I losing my mind? Is this is this a reference? It very well could be. I'm not entirely sure. Speaking of the giant baby that we see in this like giant ass bathtub, I think. I don't even want to hazard a guess as to what that idwell is meant to represent, because like yikes, because there's also like sharks in the water. I don't know. But what I do have to question is John Walker remarks that this killer must have had a traumatic first memory, and that's what triggered this idwell. And I have to question, was that John's idwell? Like, was that the chief's idwell? Because like the baby had the same like weird red eyes that John has, like almost to a T, John Walker's eyes. That's probably a stretch, but I thought it was interesting enough to point out. Like it really caught me off guard how similar the eyes were. And I'm probably reaching, but it would make for an interesting fight if they were within John's idwell itself. I don't know, but regardless, we have a little bit of a skirmish between the three detectives, and then they quickly run away, and they jump into, of all places, bringing us full freaking circle, they jump into Fukuda's idwell, and I immediately missed my boy. I was hoping maybe we'd see him in there, but alas, he's not there. But basically, it is here that it gets a little bit confusing, admittedly. But from what I gather, they are using John Walker's God complex against him, and basically implying that he is the seventh serial killer, and that because of that, he is to be the seventh victim, I guess. And what ends up happening is that they remark that even though the two of them are there, even though it's just the two detectives, they really were the three pillars as a unit. And even though Fukuda is dead, he's still there in spirit. And the chair that they trick John Walker into sitting in is Fukuda's, cockpit. So that's what he's sitting in. So they actually managed to, and because they had the cockpit tablet, they actually managed to connect him into the second Idwell, the second layer within the layer within layer, the dream within dreams. They end up sending him there, wherein Sakaido immediately apprehends him once he gets there. So I'm not entirely clear on how a lot of that went down, but I don't really care that much. Because to me, I'm like, what is the emotion of this scene trying to get across? And the idea that even though the three of them are no longer a trio, Fukuda still getting the save from beyond, being the best damn character in the season. And I say season because I have a pretty heavy feeling based off the end scene and some stuff throughout the episode that we might possibly get a season 2, depending on how well Id Invaded does. I don't know if it did particularly well enough to get a season 2. I hope it does, because I freaking love this show. But it's nice to see Fukuda still getting the save and being the best damn character this season. And also it's nice to see Akihito learn to have faith again at the end, which I think is really interesting. It's a nice note to leave the character on, this idea that he's no longer relying solely on his own shall we say, killer instincts. He is allowing himself to not only be the great detective who solves mysteries on his own, but he is open to working with characters like Hondamachi, working with Kura again, and sort of having faith in people beyond himself, which I think is a nice little wrap up. There's a lot of faith motifs in the series, which I've noticed, especially in this finale. It's outright said to have faith in those in a plane above you, So it's okay. But regardless, I like the idea, and I'm choosing to view it as Akihito finally having faith in those around him again, and allowing himself to still mourn his family, but to continue doing what he's doing to honor his family, which I really, really appreciate. And Akihito, by the way, surviving. I saw a lot of people saying, is he gonna die? I'm really glad he didn't, and to me it really heavily implies that we might get a second season if Akihito's not dead, and Asukai is back inside the Mizuhaname. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about the battle to end, quote-unquote, Kiki Asukai. So obviously, when they sent Momoki in, the idea was that Momoki would put an end to Kiki Asukai, which would in turn, I suppose, put an end to Kura and their Mizuhaname shenanigans. But that's not quite how things go. And this part of the episode is obviously less intense and crazy and action-packed as the Idwell stuff, but that's how the show has usually presented the real world, is that the tone itself feels more not only is the series typically action-packed and fun when it's in the Idwell, but it's normally very kind of slow and dry and almost somber when set in reality. So to see that Momoki's side of this episode is genuinely tough to watch at times, it's very fitting within the show, and very fitting for the situation that Momoki finds himself in, because he doesn't want to be there, of course. And I think it's really worth noting how much more somber the tone in the Momoki scenes are, especially seeing I think, and I'm sure some people are going to think that this is overblown, or some people will think oh, that was too much. I think the show has gone to certain extremes at points, and Momoki literally being defibrillated, I don't know, whatever, I can't pronounce words. Momoki having CPR performed on him from remotely, doing chest compressions within the suit, literally breaking this man's ribs and forcing him to spit up the vomit that was stuck in his throat. That shit was gross and brutal, but at the same time very much keeping within the show's desire to not shy away from being brutal. When a scene calls for things to be brutal, it's brutal, but it's never brutal for the sake of being brutal. It's brutal to show you what these characters are willing to do to get to their end goal. And for Momoki, he was basically dead for a couple seconds there, and he still manages to push through thanks to the help of Matsuoka and the gang on the outside to ultimately attempt to save Asukai, to save Kiki, instead of ending Kiki, which is what I thought was going to happen, in a scene that is vaguely similar to Eri from My Hero Academia. If you've been keeping up with My Hero Academia, then you already know what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But this felt like a darker mirror of that. The idea that you are like the idea that somebody is in a position where they want to be saved and that everybody wants to save them, but at the same time they can't help but feel like they're beyond saving, and that people trying to save them is ultimately just hurting them. And this is like a much darker take on that sort of tale. And the difference being that Kiki doesn't want to be saved. She wants to, like, she does, because we see her get excited when she thinks that Momoki is there to save her, but she ultimately realizes that maybe it's best to just take herself off the playing field. She even tries, which is really dark, but what I loved, and it's the reason why I like Momoki as a character, I just wish we knew more about him as a character. But what I like is that Momoki never went in there with the intention of taking her out. Like, there was no bullets in the gun. And it actually reminded me of a Justice League episode where Batman goes in to talk to Ace, and the idea was that he would take Ace out, but he never had the intention of actually doing that. He just wanted to talk to her. And that's very similar here. Momoki never went in there with the intention of taking Kiki off the table. He just wanted to talk to her and try to convince her to let him save her. Sadly, saving her entails putting her back in the Mizuhaname in a scene that I wish hit harder than it did, because I was emotional for Kiki for sure, and I wanted to feel it from Momoki's side, and I did, and I totally get what they were going for, and I think it ultimately works. And it's the idea that Momoki is so distraught because all he's wanted to do is save her. He has been chasing this girl since he first found her in the Challenger's basement, right? He first finds her and he's there to help her at every turn. And then she goes missing. So for him, it's like, after all the work that I put in to make sure that she was safe and that she was healing up and that she would eventually be okay, she goes missing. What the hell? So he finally finds her again, only to have to put her back into the machine that was causing her so much grief in the first place. And it does hit. The scene hits, especially Kiki's reaction of like, I'll be here waiting. Like, oh God, right in the heart. I just wish we knew Momoki better as a character. And again, it makes me think that maybe we're gonna get a second season where we can explore some of these characters, because there's a lot of characters in the Kura team that I feel like we just didn't know enough for certain scenes to have real impact and weight. And I feel like a second season with a new big bad that they have to try to take down could be really interesting. I don't know. Who knows? I sincerely hope we get a second season, because I thoroughly loved Id Invaded, and I gather a lot of you guys did too. So yeah, I was like, again, there's elements of the finale that I think could have been brushed up, elements that I think could have been done a little bit better had they been given more time to flesh things out maybe. But overall, I really, really dug it. With that said, everybody, I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here, and I'm gonna say that this is a really strong cup of Orange Pico. It's just a good, solid ending. There's some stuff that I wish they kind of explored more or touched up on, but ultimately, I like that it has a happy ending to it. Like, I like that the characters actually are happy at the end, and I'm a sucker for stories with a happy ending, especially dark stories that have a happy ending. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I enjoyed it. I would love to hear what you guys think, but that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching my Id Invaded videos, everybody. And that's it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then be sure to go ahead and hit that like button and leave a comment down below, because it all pleases the almighty YouTube algorithm, which helps me out a ton. So if you choose to do so, kudos to you. And if you'd like to go that one step further to help the channel out, then go ahead and check out some of the mugs listed just under this video from our Teespring store. That is super appreciated. Or if you want to help out the channel more regularly, of course, you can check out our Patreon, like these lovely people that you see before you. And speaking of our patrons, I would like to give a big shout out to those of you in the Earl Grey tier. Zevi, Andrew, Branson, Calvin, Crowbar of Irony, Daniel, Digger the Fox, Dominic, Emily, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria, Marshall B, Mater, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Steven, Sakochi, Tristan, and Veridin. Thanks so much to all of you in the Earl Grey tier, as well as those of you in the Orange Pico tier. And if you too would like to join our T-Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. Once again, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys have a great day, and until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.